lectures and master classes and concerts in the future. So this is really, really great that we can have teachers and lecturers even in Novi Sad in Europe. That's just quite amazing. Anyway, I'll turn it over to Christina, and she will introduce Alan. So take it away, Christina.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert, and welcome to everyone. It's so great to see you all and be together for this special event, which is our first online Boston Piano Amateurs Association lecture on the topic of piano somatics and how we can be musically mindful using a somatic approach. We've already read Alan's bio, but I thought by way of
I'll assume that all those hands are clapping, even though you're muted. Thank you very much, Christina, for this wonderful introduction. Gee, I did all that. I can't believe it. And thanks to your association for inviting me. Today we're going to talk a little bit about somatics. I mean, Christina has already said a lot of what I was going to say. It's great. Like that, the whole thing is that the pianistic world seems to be divided into two camps. Those who say, you know, let your ear and your intuition and your musicianship guide your hands, and don't think about the physical too much because it's really going to screw things up. And the other half says that, well, maybe we should attend to what we're doing physically because maybe we can develop our technique. The former camp, when they play well, they tend to have been trained really well so far back in their childhood that they simply forget all that stuff that happened to allow them to play well. And I, for one, did not have good training as a child, so when I got to university, I was basically very naive and not, I had talent, but I didn't have resources. I played well just by sheer intuition. My hands didn't know what they were doing. So luckily, I found Phil Cohen, and before him Laurie Milkman, who started to develop my playing, not along standard lines. Because some of the pianists, my colleagues who were studying with other teachers, they would rattle out their scale, and they would move their fingers, and it all sounded very mechanical and brilliant and empty. And I didn't know anything, but something in me was repulsed by that. I just, no, there's got to be a different way, a better way, another way. And of course, the playing of people like Horowitz and Rubinstein and the past greats gave proof that, you know, the way a lot of lesser pianists play is lacking in certain essentials. So studying with Phil Cohen, and before him Laurie, allowed me, Phil spent his life figuring out what some of those essentials were, looking at the psychology and the physiology of how we move when we're involved in a high-level artistic process. I'm going to actually do a PowerPoint presentation along with it. So when I put the PowerPoint up, let me just start to share my screen and let's see what happens. So now, can you still see me? Yeah, and can you see, so if anybody has a problem, like if I'm too small or that we can do it differently, but this is how we're gonna run it for now. Now I have to figure out how to move my PowerPoint. Okay, there we go. So, somatics is the study of the conscious body. So there are lots of, you know, there's physiotherapy, there's sports medicine, there's sports training, there's classical piano technique where, you know, you either use the finger action school or the arm weight school, and basically you play your scales and the hand develops. Somatics is, the soma is from the Greek word soma, which means body, but the conscious body is learning through sensation. So the somatic practitioner, like a Feldenkrais practitioner or Alexander technique or even Tai Chi goes in this direction. Instead of, okay, I reach for a glass and I've got pain in my shoulder. And so the physiotherapist might say, well, you better strengthen certain muscles in here so that the pain goes away. The somatic practitioner looks at the whole system. So if I'm reaching for a glass like this, it's a totally isolated movement. My body is not involved at all. And if I allow my body to go along with the movement, that alone can reduce the pain in the shoulder and sometimes make it go away. So it's a very simplistic example, but there's a kernel of golden truth there, which relates to how human movement works, because any movement exists in the brain as a template before it happens. And those templates, if I squeeze my fingers like this, all the muscles of my body will be affected by that movement, because the brain realizes if I reach for something over here, my center of gravity is displaced and my left leg has to be a little more supportive of my body and the right leg has to let go a little bit, and the torso, the muscles in the torso. The brain manages all muscles for every movement, even just moving my little finger like that. So somatics starts to help sense what's going on. If I reach over here and I just say to myself, oh, how much weight is on my left sits bone? Oh, and how much is on the right sits bone? And how heavy does my arm feel? And if I let it, the heaviness express itself, does my torso change? Do my ribs change? Directed awareness of sensation feeds those movement templates in the brains, of which there are many, tens of thousands, and the complex neurophysiological management of movement can be improved. So that's the basic aim of somatic practitioners. But of course, as my friend Kemal Gekic said, we've had arguments about this for decades now. You can't make music when you're thinking about your ribs. And he's right, you can't. But you can attend to your ribs for a certain time, find out how they're participating in this or that phrase, this or that chord, this or that passage, and then let it go. But the movement template part of the brain has been informed, and that information will affect the effectiveness with which you do the movement consequently. And all of this, many people go to the somatic practitioners to help with injury prevention or injury rehabilitation, but for me, the performance injury reduction is the tip of the iceberg, and the real work here is artistic, as we'll see in today's presentation. So the bones transmit kinetic energy better than the muscles. So basically, if I push against a wall and my elbows are bent like this, I have to let go of all the tension this is causing. I'm using a lot of muscular effort, and that muscular effort does not really have that much effect. I'm coming back here, and now I'm going to straighten the elbows, and now my entire skeletal force, the skeletal force, not muscular force, can exert a lot more action on the piano. I can push with much greater effectiveness with much less muscular effort. Why? Because the bones are transmitting all the kinetic energy. Now the muscles have to work really hard. So this has profound implications for piano technique. Because let's say I was taught to fall onto the key. Well, actually, in that moment of falling, now, okay, I got a nice round sound, but in the moment of falling, in the moment of connecting to the key, I actually have to clench somewhere inside to stop the falling, or else I'll do this. And so the function of my movement is to fall, and therefore there must be some grabbing of muscles. And so the muscular effort increases, but that muscular effort did not move the key. That muscular effort stopped the falling. So now I'm going to rethink it. Let's say I'm going down here, but I'm going to stand my finger up. Oh, all of a sudden, all those muscles created a skeletal alignment which comes to balance. Therefore, there's no muscular effort needed to maintain it. And all the small muscular effort that was made to produce the sound is dissipated. All of a sudden, my skeleton is doing all the work. The muscles do a little bit, but the skeleton does the vast majority of the work. So we can bring that idea to piano playing with astonishing results. And I see that I've skipped over skeletal mechanics, the CNS and movement. I sort of talked about it, but I must mention that small movements feed the brain. Okay? Because if I do big exercise movements, the brain can't sense all the minute changes it might make to improve the muscle-bone relationship. But when I slow it down and then maybe use my other hand to lift up my two arm bones, the radius and the ulna, and you can do this, by the way. You can copy me at home on your piano or on your desk or whatever. So please feel free to. You're going to get a lot more out of the lecture if you follow along. So just stand up on a key or on the table and let your arm go forward and back, and let the hand guide the forearm, the radius and the ulna, forward and back. And sense how there's a balance point where actually everything all of a sudden feels let go, even though it's floating. And then try it again, but falling down. And notice how much effort there is throughout the whole mechanism. And that's, I believe, the origin of a lot of our rounding out movements. We create a kind of a pressure, and then we round out to relieve that pressure. But if I stood up, there's no pressure to begin with. I'm standing. So I can sense how to get there if I slow down the movement and reduce the effort of the movement and reduce the range of the movement. That's the kind of sensory food the brain likes. And you get to the point where you realize, as Moshe Feldenkrais asserted, that there's no mind-body split. So I pay a lot of attention to the body, but I might say, do not play a phrase like this. Play a phrase like this with a lateral movement of the arm. Move your forearm laterally instead of moving it up and down. So that seems to be a physical strategy, but what I'm saying is, shape the phrase. Diddle-diddle-dum, is it a da-da-da-da-da? If I'm physically doing da-da-da-da-da, my mind may think diddle-diddle-da. And my mind, in some cases, may even overcome the physical anomaly, but this physical movement does not match diddle-diddle-dum. This physical movement very nicely matches diddle-diddle-dum. So I may be thinking, it looks like I'm thinking physically, but I'm actually always thinking musically. So when I talk about physical strategies today, please keep that in mind. And when you get down to it, there's no mind-body split. When I play, I feel like there's a little brain right in here and another little brain right in there, and they're shaping tones, they're articulating tones, they're articulating phrase shapes, they're dancing and singing, but that's a physical act that has a musical intention, the physical act in fulfilling the musical intention. This is nothing new, except it's not often taught, but there were certain great artists who taught this, among them Cortot. Alfred Cortot, if you read his students, you look at how Ivan Hubert taught, and you look at how Magda Tagliaferro wrote about it, they all talk about this carving the phrase with the arm. And it's very different from the weighted touch, which concerns how the arm is related to every note. And there, the rounding out is not to join notes, it's to beautify the tone of one note. So we're changing the function of the arm a little bit when we go to the Cortot conception of this arm carving the phrase or shaping the phrase. Unfortunately, he didn't write about it. In the Rational Principles of Pianoforte Technique, he does a lot of kind of finger exercises. I think he wanted to be a good pedagogue or something, and it's a shame. But of course, it's hard to write about that stuff in a book. So there's no mind-body split, and there's no technique-musicianship split. As I'm cultivating refined physical gestures, I'm also cultivating a refined musical expressivity. And the wonderful thing about this physical approach is that it applies to pianists of all levels. Beginners can benefit from it, and as you'll see in today's lessons, even very, very advanced pianists can benefit from refining even the basic principles. So after studying with Phil, as Christina said, I did a Feldenkrais training, and then I got to watch Kemal Gekic, whose consummate technique was the perfect example for these skeletal organizational kind of ideas. And this idea of the skeleton and the bones doing most of the work, and I'm watching Kemal play, and I'm seeing oh, it's like the fingers are standing up, the fingers are walking, the fingers are running. All of a sudden, the inspired moment, oh, the hand is like a mini body. So the hand, if you think of the hand as having an ankle and a knee and a hip joint and a pelvis and a torso that breathes, then all of a sudden all the principles of walking can apply, and running and standing can apply to the hand just as they apply to the human body. So when we study how the hand stands, walks, runs, and jumps, we can learn how when we study how the body can do it, we can improve how the hand does it. I think the title seems to be blotted out here, Piano Somatics in Practice. We improve physical organization to improve all aspects of our playing, the musicianship, the agility, the power, and the sensitivity. And if you look at the greats, you will see these correspondences between how the human body stands, walks, and runs, and how the hand stands, walks, and runs. And there are certain differentiations which have to take place, and there's a certain, of course, the problem is that the forearm is not vertical. The forearm is horizontal, so we will not, it's not literally like, like a torso. Because of that, there are certain inversions which crop up, which we need to resolve, we need to take a look at. The first of these being between the wrist and the hand. So when I fall into the key with a weighted touch, try that now, and just fall into a key or into the table and weight it a little bit. And then you'll see that either this hand stands up really well or it's kind of collapses. And if you move forward, it'll either move forward with the hand collapsing or move forward with the top knuckles staying really potent. So get a feeling of the difference between moving forward, just the wrist taking over and the hand pooping out, and moving forward in a way where the finger stands and then the arm follows. When the finger stands and the arm follows, the wrist stays in the middle. It's above the fingertip, below the knuckle. When the finger kind of poops out and just lets the arm do it, then the wrist moves forward, but the hand is empty. And therefore, you've lost the internal walking, standing, running power of the hand itself. And many pianists do this a little bit. Why? Because we tend to curl the fingers more than play with flat fingers. Everybody knows you have to curl your fingers to play the piano. But there's a functional way and a non-functional way to do that. So the hand is made to grasp. First things first, the hand is made to grasp. So would you please put your hand out in front and then curl the thumb. And you notice I didn't say to myself, I'm going to curl my fingers, but when you curl your thumb, do you see your fingers curl too? It's very difficult to curl the thumb without the fingers curling as well. And now if you follow that a little bit further, then it's kind of like if you went further than that and made a tight fist, that would be how babies grasp. And sense how that feels. Sense where there's tension and where there's relaxation all the way up the arm into the shoulder and the body. You can do it on key or on a surface. And if you notice that if you do it on a surface and curl like that, the knuckle stays down. And that actually creates tension. The hand is empty. The inside of the hand is deflated. So now, draw the thumb, the flat thumb, across to the flat fingers, like this. Draw the thumb, and sense how different that feels. If you do it on a surface, it creates a wonderful triangle structure where the thumb is the bottom of the triangle, and the hand and fingers form a 90-degree, the two sides of an isosceles triangle. Now, you can do that with a lot of effort and make it tense, but you can also do it very lightly. When I do it lightly, my arm lets go. And an arch has been created, the keystone of which is the top knuckle, the metacarpal phalangeal joint. So, now if I stand up, that triangle has been slightly tilted onto one side, but the arch still has its power. Now, when I first teach this, I'll say, okay, and if you put more weight on the keystone than an arch, it actually gains in strength, but that's a solid arch, and to play piano, we need it to be a moving arch. Well, when I get out of a chair, I can strain to get out of the chair, or else I can move forward so far until my bottom is not on the chair. When I sit down, I cannot sit down, but I can just bend my knees, bend my knees, bend my knees, until, oh, my bottom is on the chair again, and I didn't even sit down. So this way, we're reducing muscular effort, and we're increasing, we're availing ourselves of the kinetic power of skeletal mechanics. So I can stand up and allow my arm to follow and have that arch structure working for me in my playing and in my phrasing and in my chords and in my scales and in everything. Also, when I stand up like that, the thumb stays straight. Now, if I stand on my thumb and then let it curl again, everything collapses. Many times we curl our thumb to play a scale, da 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 da. But you see in that curled thumb there's actually a falling down. Why would we fall down? Well, I have to fall down to get across the thumb. But if you stood up on the thumb, you would already be across the thumb, So this whole question of do I put the thumb under or not put the thumb under, I do and I don't. If you put the thumb under by curling it, you're completely collapsing the whole hand and creating huge tension all through the arm and body. If I put the thumb under by leaving it straight so that the thumb metacarpal bone is involved, the thigh bone of the thumb, then I put it under, but while I'm busy putting it under, the hand is running away from the thumb, you see? There's a rotation also happening. So I end up on my next note with having tried to put the thumb under without flexing it, by keeping it straight. And then the problem is resolved. A scale or an arpeggio becomes a series of displacements of the hand, which is supported by functional standing, especially in the thumb, but also in the fingers. Yeah? So that's the practical application of certain fundamental facts about the thumb and the hand. How grasping and thumb opposition, that's actually differentiates us from the monkeys. That's one of the reasons we can use tools, and probably has a lot to do with our development, the development of our intellect. So I asked you to look at the hands of pianists such as Rubinstein, Horowitz, Gekic, Landowska, and Arkwrigh. Rubinstein, of course, is the best example of this gloriously standing hand arch. He loved that wonderful, rich sound, and it's quite a homogeneous sound when you stand up and let the weight of the arm actually come through into the keys. Whereas Horowitz would have had the hand slightly flatter, but the function of arch generation is still there. He may not have the shape of the arch, but the muscles in here, the lumbricals and interosseous, are still generating the energy. So he would do something a little bit more active in the finger and less visibly well-shaped in the hand. I copied Kemal Gekic, whose hand, he likes to keep his hand even flatter, and for years I screwed myself because I tried to keep the hand flat like that without having those reflexes developed well enough to support it. So he would accuse me of being tense and try this and that to let it go, but I basically had to activate the grasping reflex more. Wanda Landowska goes to an even more extreme case where she pulls the fingers back like that. And then she has very highly articulated, and many people look at pictures of her hand and they say, my God, how does she not hurt herself? How is that not tendinitis? It looks horrible. But she used elasticity to make that work. And that's a special case, and we're not going to have time to discuss it today. But so just to point out that there are many solutions. I'm not saying that one way is right and other ways are wrong. So we've already discussed the lateral arm movements of Cortot, and this involvement of the whole body. We're going to see it in one of the lessons, and basically when you do these arm movements, if they radiate back into the body, then there's a sense of the whole self playing. And this is completely different from the kind of histrionics we see of people swaying and this and that. When I look at that, I see a person who is not in balance and is desperately searching for the balance point. And what I'm talking about is being able to find the balance point before you start and play from the balance point. And no matter where you're going, the balance point is informing how you're getting there. So this is playing the piano with the whole self, which actually opens up emotional involvement. It's not tension. I've shown this to people. For instance, people who come with me with a very weighted touch, and I say, stand up, come on, stand up, and actually stand up with a feather kind of a touch. And they say, Professor, I feel like I'm playing with no emotion. I feel disembodied, I feel disengaged from the piano. That's because their normal experience of emotion is, oh, I'm so emotional, oh, I'm so emotional, yeah? There's this visceral tension that's generating it all. And here I'm just sitting like a bump in a hole. But because I'm, again, from a point of repose, the emotional tone changes completely. It doesn't feel manufactured. It feels that it comes from a deeper place. It comes from a place where you're just allowing it to materialize rather than generating it, working so hard. So that's where we're aiming in terms of playing the piano with the whole self. That's the title of my 4th book, by the way. And feeling from it within as we play. I've talked a lot about structuralizing things by standing up. But if we melt into the keys, as we'll see Michael doing later on, and just playing a chord and then deflating the arch on purpose, but in a way where the sensory experience of the keys is enriched. So if you're at a piano, just play a chord and just let the palm melt into the keys, and then roll the hand a little bit that way, and sense various parts of the palm sort of feeling the key more than they usually would. You may even be able to feel the 4 metacarpal bones within the hand itself. And you could even palpate one, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next. And slowly all the muscles and nerves and everything kind of dissolve. And then, when you go to play again, that new sensory image of the hand will inform how you stand up. And you discover the effortless way of standing up, where the bones really do most of the work. As Feldenkrais said, any truly efficient movement will be perceived as effortless. So we may have to go through certain effortful exercises, like, come on, stand up, or to awaken muscles that are just asleep, but we could also, come on, help the arm, help the arm, help the arm, oh, stand up. You see the difference between like pulling the hand up like this, which is a stand up, activating all those finger muscles, exercise, but with of course the wrist in the middle, balanced, not up here. And standing up by floating the forearm forward, floating the forearm forward, floating the forearm forward, and allowing the finger to simply find those skeletal alignments where it's balanced almost more like a rope than a solid structure. The muscles and the nerves have a completely different experience, which is also wonderful for them in terms of simply playing with an enriched sensation which allows the intuition to express itself, to manifest itself. So let's move on to the lessons that I want to show. How does this work in practice? I'm doing a lot of blah, blah, blah. In the first lesson, that's the amateur pianist. She's an intermediate pianist, let's say, and she stands up. When I tell her to stand up, she does her wrist. So I basically tell her, come on, bring the heel in close to the hand, to the fingertip. it's kind of a rudimentary first approximation, but at least it gets her out of this, the wrist thinking that it's the keystone of the arch, and it allows the keystone of the arch, the true keystone of the arch, to be felt. In the second lesson, we'll look at how thumb opposition is so necessary, because many times when the hand arch is weak, the thumb will lift itself up in an effort to help the fingers stand up. And then the thumb is stuck there. Then of course the hand arch stays weak, because now the fingers think, oh, the thumb is helping me, I don't have to do anything. And the thumb thinks that it's helping. It doesn't realize that to really help, it must come into its own and not be the same like the fingers, to be different from the fingers. So, like I show in Pianimals, the thumb is an ugly duckling who is actually a swan. So we bring the thumb into its unique nature. I wrote a whole book about it called All Thumbs, Well-Coordinated Piano Technique, and I think at this point I could write a whole other book about it. So you'll see references to the thumb scattered through all my work, because it just I keep finding new ways to get that thumb-hand relationship more empowered. Indirect attack to produce more power and dexterity. We'll look at Wilde-Jagd, Liszt's Wilde-Jagd from an advanced student, and then we'll look at how the basic action, which I did in a certain form from an intermediate student, can even help an advanced student open up their sound and open up their expression. So let's move now to the first of these. And this is Mozart's Rondo alla Turca. And let me know if the sound is not good. It will be better in the recording that you will eventually receive of this lecture, and I apologize in advance. Can everybody hear the sound? Okay, so that's enough. You can see that it's actually deceiving, because she sort of has a pretty good hand arch, but you hear it in the playing that something's not working. The rhythm is very uneven. The melody is not that musical. It's kind of stumbling. So there are many teachers who would just work on musicianship. They would work on, Francie, are you really hearing yourself? Listen, listen, shape a diga-daga-dum, daga-daga-dum, and train her ear and train her to manage the music better simply by musicianship. And my idea is to, okay, that's this fantastic way of working, and can we shorten that process? Can we inform that process by a certain physical strategy which is going to allow her to get there sooner? So I start off with this basic, come on, just stand up and bring your heel closer.
That's right. Now, Francie, play that note and stand the finger right up like this.
Mm-hmm.
Stand it up. I'm just showing you with my, no, that's your wrist.
That's right. So now you can't see Francie. You can't see Francie, so now we're going to take a look at this same passage but from another camera angle. Here we go. Now Francie's at the very top of your screen, and I'm right next to her on the...
Francie, play that note and stand the finger right up like this.
What?
Stand it up. I'm just showing with my, no, that's your wrist.
You can't see what?
We cannot see the video.
At all?
We only hear it.
Oh crap. Okay, I was afraid this was happening. Just hold on a second. Hold on. Stop share. Hello everybody, I'm back again, but we want to share the screen, but we want to do it, just share the screen. Okay, share the screen, then go to this. Now can you see the video?
Yes. We begin to see
That's
something.
your wrist.
Yes, we do see.
I'm just, don't do it with your right hand. I'm showing your right hand because my right hand happens to be closer to the camera, okay?
Okay.
But when my hand stands up like that, it's not the wrist.
try this as you're watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, so stand it up and let the heel, feel the heel approaching that fifth finger, and then exaggerate it till the heel is lying down like we did in the ATM today. Okay? And repeat that many times. Like this, lie down. Straight up, approach.
This fingernail is just a little bit too long.
Yeah.
It's making
Okay, so then she has to go get her fingernail clipper, for God's sakes. So, yeah, so that is Francie, and you see it's a fairly primitive kind of intervention, like, but I have to start somewhere, and I feel like by starting with this somewhat primitive intervention, unfortunately, the lessons are so short that I can't show you before and after, because afterwards her rhythm got better, ba-da-da-da-dum, she had to slow it down a little bit, but it got less stumbly, and I'm hoping that you can see by simply organizing the hand like this, it's going to be more capable of using the ear to shape a really rhythmically healthy phrase. And you know, in this one, before and after, I write at the bottom here, the moment of the integration did happen later. So let's go on to the next lesson where we discuss the thumb, and this is in Paris. It's a lady who speaks French, so if you hear me speaking French, don't worry. And this is the Bach, little Bach, C major Plato, the Bach. No, this is not set up right. I set up the time, and now the time is not set up. It stopped being set up. Sorry. 2:48. Here we go. So do you see how the left-hand thumb is held up in the air? She's going to play some octaves now, and the whole middle of her hand is going to drop entirely as she tries to get the fifth finger and the thumb. So the middle of her hand is not serving her well at all. See, the thumb is trying to hold the hand arch up, and she's stiff everywhere. Okay, so then what I did with her, again, and you can do this now, it's a fairly primitive, you can do it at the piano actually if you want. It's a fairly primitive thing where I stand the thumb up and I keep the fingers differently. As I was telling Ulker before, it's a cantilever. The architects here will know what I'm talking about. It's a cantilever where the thumb is the supporting pole, and then the fingers kind of stick out with no support. And then you keep the thumb standing while you're playing some other fingers. And I actually had her put her thumb on the key slip, because again, her thumb is chronically like this. The hand is chronically tense. It needs to differentiate thumb from finger. So in order to get her into even the first stage of doing that, she's a beginner, I have to do something radical, like exaggerate the differentiation so her nervous system can get it. So I did it in the right hand. So you notice she's missing notes because that feeling is so strange for her. She has to actually redo her intervals. The actual size of an interval will feel different. But you see, her hand is instantly in a completely different shape, but more important to that, it's opened up a walking function in the hand. Yeah. So already the rhythm was actually better. Now here I'm going to do it with her right hand, her left hand, and I'm going to sensorially come in. I'm going to actually touch and coax the thumb to get under, and let the fingers be over. I make it as sensorially as rich as possible, you know, making it more possible that she really gets it. And then eventually I will have her do it herself so she can do it at home. And you can see slowly the hand is coming into functionality. You see the shape, but implied by that shape is a new function. Walking, standing has been improved. She's starting to get it, but then she loses it again. She's busy with her notes. That's the trouble. When you start thinking about the text, you stop thinking about doing this. So it's often good to do it just with some sort of exercise and not even bother with notes. So while you're watching here, you can be trying it yourself, Sense how your thumb can be different from the fingers. Yeah, and now she's going to do it herself. I'm telling her that second finger, the hip joint of the hand, the second finger, that's actually the hidden problem. Now she's going to come in and actually support her second finger knuckle, because that's the other half of it's the two halves of the equation. Both halves have to be addressed. Okay? And did you hear how much more even the rhythm was? Now, let's move on to, we've done an intermediate student, we've done a beginning student, and now let's move on to an advanced student. This is Ramon Holzbergen. He lives in the Netherlands, and he's playing Wilde-Jagd, and he plays it pretty good. And he's actually done a lot of Feldenkrais, so he's really thinking about the body a lot. And at this point, this is Paris. You're going to hear the classic Paris police siren in the background at some point, so you know it's Paris. And he does very well, but he doesn't let go. He does a tame hunt instead of a wild hunt. Too much wrist. Okay, so you see, it's pretty good. Occasionally he uses his wrist too much, but everything is pretty well set up, but he's not getting the sound he needs. It's a little too careful. So, you know, who am I to criticize? But we're not here to criticize people, but everybody who comes to a lesson wants to improve. So even if they're playing amazingly, you know, if you see a way that you can help them improve, then why not explore? So I decide to just show him, and what I'm showing him is a classic characteristic of the Leschetizky school, indirect attack. Leschetizky always said, never attack the key directly, always introduce a certain degree of indirectness. And that indirect attack here, this indirect attack here grows my hand arch so that the octaves have resonance and freedom, and it also connects me to my body. So as soon as I've done this, that movement ripples all the way back into my torso. And you'll hear it, I don't know if you can hear it over Zoom, there's a little bit of a difference in the sound. Oh, come on, Alan. I didn't set it up right. Here we go. Okay, I have to stop. Now, that looks like I was just slamming the hell out of the piano. I admit. But hidden in, it looks like it was a down. But actually hidden in that down is this indirect thing, which I'm going to now explain. But I have to admit, it looks like I'm actually coming up. I'm not going down and coming up. Yeah. Has to be wild. Has to be wild. Artistic beating of the piano, I say.
But in a way which does not show any lack of respect for the instrument. So you see, the piano is actually a flexible thing.
Yeah. Can you hear what I'm saying, or should I repeat everything? You can hear it? Okay, the piano is actually a flexible thing. Listen to this. Yeah. Okay, so we're short on time, so I'll cut that off. But did you see I said that the piano is actually an elastic medium, even though it's comprised of hard things like wood and metal and everything. And then I make my body elastic so that the elastic leverage of the key and the elastic leverage of my body, there's a symbiosis. And out of that comes this amazing sound. So Ramon actually did pretty good. Which I hope you can hear. Okay, so did anybody see that my hands are on his body? I actually, beginning, I had one hand on his chest and the other hand on the ribs. So I'm guiding him, not pushing him in any direction, but just sensing, where's that little adjustment that can help his body participate in this elastic animation of the instrument. So that's another component which is fascinating to explore. And finally, we have, oh my goodness, who's this? Some of you will recognize Michael, and this is actually from a lesson about 2 or 3 weeks before he played at the Boston Amateur Piano Competition in 2014 and won. This is the first time we met in Paris, and here he's playing Debussy L'Île Joyeuse. I don't know if you can hear the sound. And his hand is great. Look at the hand arch. Look at the wrist, wonderfully placed. But watch, his left hand is going to compress. Did you see that compression in the left hand? So he's using a certain down to create a forte. So certain amount of energy has been externalized to the arm. Now there's a way of externalizing to the arm which works, but there's a way of compressing which is going to limit you. So even though Michael is a consummate pianist, I can still work with him on these principles. This is one thing I wanted to stress, that this approach, this somatic approach, works across the board. So here, and we're going to go back and work very slowly. I'm just working to, instead of, look, he plays kind of pointillistically, so. So everything is very well placed, and the hand is extremely good. But this, if I place it, I place. Actually, the energy for that placement is coming from externally. It's not coming from the hand. If I have played from an internal, the grasping action brought to life, I don't place, I'm there and I move the key. I'm inside the key already and I'm moving the key. So it's a fundamentally different action. And to get him there, I'm going to have him rub the keys and get closer to the keys and do all sorts of stuff to resolve the wrist-hand anomaly, because at one point I asked him to slide his hand back and the wrist would naturally go down. If you slide your hand along the keys towards you, the wrist will naturally melt down onto the key slip, but he raised his like that. So there's some internal tension there, some residual effort which we want to address to make his playing, to move the sound even more. He's got great sound, but there's a certain static quality which is hard to pick up. But if you can pick up on it and help him move it more, it's going to open his sound even enough to win a competition. So you see, I'm saying grow your hand arch, grow your hand, and look, he uses his arm and his wrist. Look at that. No, and now already it's better. He gets it very quickly. But then he has to fool around with it and familiarize with it himself and do many kind of half mistakes, half good, and slowly fill in the picture. What's that strange thing Alan wants me to do? Grow the hand and not just play with a already grown hand. So you see, we work, and I'll do it, and then I do this thing where I show him how growing the hand internally improves the orchestration. Because you've got this, you've got you've got this double voice happening, and the two voices are very different. When you stand up better, that orchestration, the difference between the two voices will come out. And again, look, he dropped his arch. There's no differentiation between the voices if you drop your arch like that. There's no way. Ah, that's better. But again, you see, he has to feel it. He's going very slow. So all the sensory nerves, all the motor nerves that have to change what they do, they can all contrive to acquire this new kinesthetic relationship to the keys. There you go. It's starting to grow from within. There you go. So you get the idea. I'm going to skip over the next one because we're out of time. Oops, I didn't stop it. Come on, stop. And one more example of Michael playing the D major prelude of Rachmaninoff. And look, again, it's very good, but it's a little pointillistic. It's so beautiful, but if you look very carefully, there's something a little stuck in there. It's so hard to pick up because his playing is glorious. It's so great. It was already one of the best versions of this D major prelude I ever heard, actually. And great orchestration. And very free much of the time, but not all of the time. See, he's controlling it. He's controlling it and producing it, but it can be done better. Okay, so now, well, how did I work with them? Here we go. So, I'm showing him how to move laterally. If you just move the arm laterally and melt the hand into the keys more, then it changes everything already. And once the accompaniment has transformed, then everything can transform. Am I in the right place? Yes. Look. Now that was pointillistic, and now I'm going to smooth it out and make it more organic. I'm melting more and I'm moving more laterally. I married the keyboard. I'm inside. And then Michael starts to get it. Later on. Now he's going to do his wrist, and sensorially I'm trying to give him every possible chance of getting this new feeling in his hand. I'm saying, do that, grow your arch, slide back. And now, you see, he's struggling. That's the wrist, but he's slowly waking his fingers up, but the inversion hasn't been resolved yet. I said, do this, and you did that. Come on. That's it. Get clear on this, the arrangement of the levers. That's right. When the wrist comes up, the metacarpal bones of the hand are not different from the finger. When the wrist stays down, the metacarpal bones and the finger bones, they differentiate. And then you have a more functional lever. And now listen, if you can, I'll stop blabbing, you can hear what he's doing. ask him, do you get some sonic possibilities that you didn't have before? And he says, yes. Yeah. So there I point out how he started off pointillistically, and then he got to this other state. Yeah, so I sort of abandoned my PowerPoint at some point, and let's get back to that. And now I'm just going to say a few words in conclusion, and then open up the floor to questions and comments and impressions and everything. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Where are we here? Okay, so I hope these few little lesson examples really illustrated how the idea of a skeletal structure that moves in certain ways in imitation of human standing, walking, and running, bringing that to the piano can give us new solutions in terms of artistry, phrase shaping, agility. We didn't do anything really fast, except we did loud and Villiag, but this also works for speed. And then, and letting the sensation inform the interpretation. Being inside the piano instead of external to the piano, forcing yourself on the piano. No, joining with it, being inside it. So, in the end, physical gesture is totally equal to musical inflection, and there really is no more pianist-piano split. You are one with the music when your gesture is one with the musical shapes. So I thank you for being attentive. I hope this was a successful form of communication. You can find out more about my books at the my AlanFraserInstitute.com site, and about attending an institute, which for the moment is only online, but hopefully if Joe Biden says that July 4th we're all going to be able to be together, then maybe this summer there will be something at UMass or somewhere else in the vicinity. And the video lessons, which can be found at pianotechnique.org. So now let's stop sharing the screen and get back to you guys. And I'm very, very happy to hear your impressions. How is all this, like, is too much, it's really bizarre, it resonates, or you understand it, it's not clear? What are your questions? Carrie Dumbaugh was the first to put her hand up.
I have a question. If you have a smaller hand
Yeah.
and you're looking for larger intervals, it's always confused me. How do you keep that hand arch if you have to flatten your hand to reach for the interval?
Yeah, remember, it's not the shape of the arch, it's the internal function of the arch. So watch, I'm going to grab an 11th, yeah? Okay, I'm not showing off, this is didactic, it's pedagogical. So you see my hand arch is way down, and now watch, whoop, whoop, whoop. I can still grow the arch. I don't have to grow it up here, I can't. And actually what happens with a small hand is if you take an interval like, maybe not, okay, I'm going to take a 10th, and then instead of trying to grow my arch by drawing my fifth finger towards my thumb, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to let that the keystone of the arch melt. And I'm going to actually melt the hand and collapse the arch and make it actually melt into the keys. When I do that, the hand bones actually get farther apart from each other. Because when I melt it down, all the muscles in there let go, and you can actually see a small hand sometimes get bigger. And then when you try to grow the arch again, then you can actually remember the non-extended state and let go. And you can actually get into extension with none of the tension which would normally be involved in extending your hand. And at that point, you actually can get a larger interval. So it's not the shape of the arch, it's those muscles which would create an arch. Horowitz very rarely grows an arch. Those muscles which would create an arch, in his case, they go directly to creating sound. So this kinetic energy is now growing a physical shape in my hand. This kinetic energy is directly creating vibration in the piano. So You don't have to grow the arch, but those muscles which would grow the arch need to be engaged. It's the difference between an inflated hand and a deflated hand. If I deflate the hand, I do it in order to sense more, but I'm not going to play with a dead hand. It's a complex question, actually, but you've touched on something essential, yes. Anybody else? Jackie. You'll have to unmute yourself. I can't unmute you. You have to do it yourself. You didn't unmute yourself. I wonder, can I unmute her? I think I can only send a message. Please. Oh, wait a minute. Wait. Ask to unmute. No. Oh, crap. Excuse me.
If you click on your name, then it says stop video, mute or you can.
Yeah, ask to unmute. No, sorry. I don't know how to do this. I'm not that Zoom proficient.
Click on her name and it will say unmute. There'll be a little menu that comes down. Click on
Yeah,
her
but
name.
you don't have to do. If I click on her name, this ask to unmute gets in the way of the microphone. I want to click on her microphone and I can't. So Jackie, at the left-hand bottom corner of your thing. Anyway, while Jackie's doing that, do we have any other questions? Yes, Brian.
As a cellist, I love that whole playing from the balance point thing. That
Uh-huh.
That's about. Well, you were talking about playing from the balance point. Could you just say a little bit more about what that actually is?
Yeah. If I stand up, I don't hold myself rigid in standing. I can actually sway a little bit and sway a little bit. And there's actually a point where my hip joints are right over my ankles and my shoulder joints are right over my hip joints, and then I'm free. And at that point, I can move in any direction without prior preparation. Now, I'm sitting back in an easy chair, there's no way I can get out of the chair easily. But if I'm already perched like this, I can stand up with no preparation. So if I'm I've got a weighted touch, then I'm not balanced. And my arm is constantly trying to retrieve the balance which it had lost by falling. So if I stand up and maybe, remember I said that the torso is vertical but the forearm is horizontal, which creates problems. So the biceps, triceps, they're responsible for creating the illusion of standing on the hand's hip joint. My forearm is not above my hand's hip joint, this is right here. But my biceps, triceps made my forearm so light that it's as if my forearm was on top of the hip joint. So and very interesting enough, all the skeletal dynamics apply absolutely. So the hip joint, to stand well, it has to be over my ankle. This metacarpal phalangeal joint, if it's over the fingertip, then you're balanced. Now, you can't always be exactly the knuckle over the fingertip, but you can be somewhere in the vicinity and you can be getting closer from it and further away from it, just as in running, the hip joint is not always over the ankle. So, but the balance point is a central moment of reference around which everything swirls. Does that answer your question? And it's happening at the level of the hand, not just the level of the body. I sometimes work with people, okay, you feel the two sits bones on the chair, and these two fingers are two sits bones on the key, and now I've got 4 sits bones. And then I move around, keeping in constant touch with all 4 sits bones. You can try that. You can push yourself away and pull yourself forwards, or you can slide the hand on the finger sits bones at the same time as you're rocking on the pelvis sits bones. There's all sorts of ways of getting the sense of the whole body in a balanced, functionally viable state where there's no parasitic contractions anywhere. Pianists tend to hold the body too rigid in order to provide this complex series of levers with a stable base. But the base needs to be moving too, and it needs to be in balance, not rigidly stable. Then it's more functional. That's from the Feldenkrais standpoint. Now wait a minute. Mary wants to ask a question, but actually Jackie succeeded in unmuting herself. Yay!
Dr. Fraser, I have a question. Oh, are you going to go, Ingrid?
No, Jackie is next. You're first, Jackie.
This morning, I was playing Schubert's Impromptu number 3,
Yeah,
which I played in many recitals
yeah,
10, 15, 20 years ago.
yeah.
But in the meantime, about 5 years ago, I broke my 5th finger,
Which hand?
my right hand,
Okay.
where, and this morning, for a whole hour and a half, I played that piece almost perfectly because I had perfected it 10 or 15 years ago, and it
Yeah.
came back to me. And I couldn't believe that I was playing with my right hand, my 5th finger. If you could see my finger, I can't straighten it.
Hold it up more. Higher, even higher. Okay, you can't straighten it.
No, I can't straighten
Okay,
it.
show me how straight you can make it. Higher. I can't see. Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was going to have it fixed, but I figured I'm too old now. I'm not, and it doesn't bother me.
You-
But are there any, and I wasn't tired. I thought I'd be more tired because but I was able to play it with this finger. Do you have any hints as to how I can improve it? But
Well,
I was amazed.
without seeing it, listen. If you played with the bent finger, but you still played well, then you did a wonderful adaptation, and all the musculature, like the finger. Everybody thinks the 5th finger is the weakest finger. It's one of the strongest fingers. The 5th
Yeah.
finger has the hypothenar group, for God's sakes. It's almost as big as the thumb muscles.
Yeah.
And if you play well, then that hypothenar group will engage. And of course, the easiest way to find that is to flatten the finger and then do a whole finger flexion. Yvonne Hubert actually created this exercise where you curl all your other fingers, leave the 5th flat. For you will just leave it in whatever position you can. But you see, just as close as you can to this, but comfortably. Then you put it on a black key, C sharp, right hand C sharp or F sharp, and then you retract the top knuckle. Now, even if your finger's totally bent, you can still retract the top knuckle like that, right?
Yeah.
That engages the hypothenar and the lumbrical interosseous of the 5th finger really, really well. And so that would enhance, to my mind, what you've already done in a certain way. Because if you could play for an hour and a half without getting tired or no pain or anything, you already made that adaptation, but you can enhance it by doing this. Then in terms of the bent fingers staying bent, have you thought of seeing a Feldenkrais practitioner about it instead of going for an operation?
I have, but I'm not going to go through that. But
No, Feldenkrais, not an operation.
I am an international tennis player, and I play tennis 4
Wow.
or 5 times a week.
Yeah,
So that might have something to do with the strengthening of my hands. Do
Right.
you agree, Doctor?
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, Pat Cash used a Feldenkrais practitioner regularly to get where he got in the tennis world.
Okay.
So we're slowly making inroads.
Thank you very, very much. I thoroughly
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Great.
Okay.
Next was Mary.
Ingrid.
Ingrid is next. No, I think Mary's next and then Ingrid.
Yeah, just what you were saying generally about if you're loosened, if you're standing at the piano, but you've been practicing for, let's say, 45 minutes, is there anything you can do to reinstate that feeling? And do you recommend a break 45 minutes or 15 or 20?
Yeah.
What do you do in the break?
Little breaks. So the brain loves rest and the body loves rest, but short rests. And then, so a few minutes just resting, like go and get a coffee or get on your phone or whatever, and then there are literally dozens of sensory exercises for the hand, from the simplest, growing the monster, just sliding the fingers towards the heel, but gently, and feeling how different that is from the normal curl. Many times at a piano conference, I'll tell a room full of piano teachers, do this, and half of them will do this. They're not even aware. Now if you do this, you'll feel there's tension through my whole system. And if you do this, all that tension melts away. So there's dozens. If you go to Pianimals, there are literally dozens of exercises, and my other books as well. And there are videos. I've done videos online. So there's all sorts of little things you can do to just enrich the sensory experience of your own hand. And the more sensation there is in there, sensation is the greatest teacher. Oh, I got a new sense of my thumb. Oh, I never knew that my third thumb bone, the thigh bone of the thumb, is the metacarpal bone. So look, it's next to the hand metacarpals. But the thigh bone of a finger is the proximal phalange. But the proximal phalange of the thumb is the shin bone of the thumb. So like, just getting the thumb into the game. Take your hand and like gently use your other hand to fold the two parts of the outside and the inside of the hand together like this. You can do it this way. Yeah. And then of course, my first picture on my DVD was a picture of the hand from this point of view. And my father told me, well, why are you putting a baby's bottom on your DVD about piano technique? And then I realized, oh, that's sort of, this thing here looks like two butt cheeks. So if you can play piano and stay aware of your two butt cheeks, the pianist butt cheeks. So we pianists, we are wonderful. Most people have two butt cheeks. We've got 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so then you go back and then you just play music, do whatever you're doing, but take 5% of your consciousness and remember, what was that feeling? What's the feeling of the thumb cantilevering the hand? What's the feeling of actually angling the entire hand more towards the thumb? Because the thumb is 50% of the hand, and most people, we stretch the thumb out instead of going with the arm to the thumb, which would immediately create a wonderful sense of balance and let go through the entire skeletal system. We play with the arm skeleton, which it looks like arm weight, but it's a different function. So people who play with arm weight and do it well, I think they're actually playing with their arm skeleton. Weight is a burden, mass is a tool. So when you've got that skeletal structure, when you feel the weight of the arm, in order to let go, relax, and feel how that skeletal structure works, then you're headed somewhere good. So yeah, lots of rests, and little sensory exercises in the rest, and then go back to doing what you're doing.
And your book is Pianimals?
Pianimals is the latest book, and it's actually the first children's method for piano based on the Feldenkrais method. It's 28 Feldenkrais exercises for the beginning pianist hands with wonderful illustrations and nice compositions. I had fun making the compositions. I surprised myself. Yeah, so there's a slinky on a keyboard. There's all sorts of crazy, well, you'll see.
Buy them on Amazon?
No, you can buy them at my website. You'll get the online store. You're going to have a link to my online store. They're going to be on Amazon eventually, but I'm not an Amazon merchant at the moment, so that's still in the works. Yeah, the online store works very well.
Anyone with a beginning hand can benefit from that book, correct?
Absolutely. And a lot of my teachers are benefiting from it themselves, as well as using it with their students. So it's the beginning of, for me, it's the beginning of something really exciting. So far, the feedback I have from my teachers is like they're astonished. Like their kids are loving it, and their kids' technique is improving by leaps and bounds. So it's very exciting, and we're just at the start of this new project. So I'm happy to be able to share it with you. Now, Ingrid had a question. Where is Ingrid? Oh, she's right underneath Mary on my screen.
Yeah.
Hi, Ingrid.
Hi, thank you very much for your ideas and comments, and I have 2 questions actually, probably more, but for now.
Yeah.
Could you comment on the involvement of the core, meaning abdomen, shoulders, the core of the body,
Yeah.
as it moves along the keyboard, and how it can aid in the sensations, the somatic sensations, and produce sound? And the reason I'm asking this is because I spent a couple of weeks at Mozarteum years ago, and
everybody please, including you Ingrid, would you please put your, I'll do it mirror image, would you please put your right ear towards your right shoulder? Okay, that's right. Where did the weight go? Onto your right sits bone or onto your left sits bone? Onto your right sits bone. Okay, come back. Now, put your right ear on your right shoulder, but put the weight on the left sits bone. Come back to the middle and do it gently and feel it, and don't put the ear all the way there. Just move, come back and move the, come back to the middle. Come back to, get your ear off the, come back, put the head in the middle. Now gently move the head just a little bit and get your weight onto the opposite sits bone and come back. Do it just 5% of the movement. Yeah. So come back to the middle and watch carefully. You see, the ear is going this way, but my weight is going that way. And try to make the ear move the same amount as the body. So the ear's moving one way and the body's moving the other way. But actually, the ear stays over the middle. Now, you're swaying. If you're swaying, that's not it. Here, there's no swaying. Look. Yeah. The head stays in the middle. The head stays in the middle. The weight is on one side and the head is going the other way. So then I do that and I ask pianists, okay, now imagine how you're going to play the piano. Doing this. So, and many people, they'll make their arms go with their head. So they'll go like this. The arm is going with the head. And I say, well, why don't you let your arms go with your body? So, zoop, 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 zoop. So there, you see, Pilates and a lot of these disciplines, they want to strengthen the core. What we want to do is educate the core. Look, if you strengthen a dumb core, you're not going to have any less pain. Let's say I'm sway-backed, and the muscles in my lower back are working too hard. Now, I strengthen those muscles. They work even harder, and I've got more pain. What they need to do is stop working so much. Let the vertebrae stand up. The vertebrae should stack up like spinning dials, one on top of the other, movable, movable. So this is an undifferentiated spine. And this, if you're moving your core like this when you play the piano, you will be stiff. And if you move the core like this, look, I never lose my balance. I'm balanced. I'm balanced. I can throw my hand way over here. I can throw my hand way down here. Whoop, 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 whoop. I never lose balance. When you go to the extreme, you can add a little bit of rotation. Extreme, add a little bit of rotation to get the cross-body hand even farther up the key. But mostly it's side bending, but it's not undifferentiated side bending, it's differentiated side bending. And so in Feldenkrais we teach it extremely. We can do stuff like this. We even put the one sits bone in midair and do this. We don't have time to do all that now. But there's all sorts of stuff you can do to get the spine mobile in all three directions: flexion, extension, side bending, and rotation. So that's an intelligent core. That's a core that's going to work for you in whatever direction you're moving musically. Does that answer your question?
What about a balance ball, or using a gimmick to kind of educate the core?
When you sit on a balance ball, you have to do everything I just showed you, or else you'll fall off.
That's right.
Is there a piano chair that's like that?
There is.
Really?
And the guy who makes them lives just upstate. He lives in New Hampshire, and it's an ingenious wooden block rolling this way, another one underneath rolling that way, and the whole thing gets you going like that. I'll get his information and send it to you guys.
Sweet.
Yeah.
My second question is your comment on Abby Whitehead's focus again on utilizing the entire arm basically in phrase structure.
That's right. Abby Whiteside's she's got a wonderful approach. I mean, I never experienced her teaching, but I've read her books and I swear by them. And each person has their strengths and weaknesses. You know, I learned something from one, another, but one thing that strikes me as especially wonderful about her approach is her sense of rhythm, and how she uses rhythm, both musically, rhythmic pulse, to shape everything, to generate everything, both physically and musically. She makes this symbiosis. And then, of course, Charles Ashbrenner, who created pulse patterning, he worked with flexion and extension of the pelvis to generate rhythmic pulse, and he worked with the side bending to generate phrase. So now, you see, if I move my arm like this, it's pretty good, but if I add a little bit of body to it, then it becomes totally organic. But her emphasis on the whole arm and the lateral arm movements, thank you. Look, I always cite Alfred Cortot as like one of the only ones that does this arm sculpting thing. Like if the arm's moving vertically, it's not shaping phrases. Fingers make notes, arms join notes. When that fundamental division labor is clear, then you're on the road. And many people get them confused. And I forgot that, but you're absolutely right. Abby Whiteside is one of the others who really highlights this and works with it in a wonderful way. Great. Thank you for the opposite question. Is everybody pressed for time? I mean, I'm happy to go over. I don't care. I'm retired. But I don't know, we're over time, but I'm quite happy to go on, or else we can wrap it up if people have to leave. Or if there's more questions or comments, please let me know.
Are there any more questions?
I have one more, but I will hold
Sure.
off.
Oh, come on.
Oh, go ahead. I just wanted your comment on octave scales.
Yeah.
People with a small hand. It's really tough to maintain that arch in
Yeah.
a progressive way, and I'm having some problems with that,
Yeah.
particularly when it involves a lot of black to white key motion.
Yeah. Especially hard because if you have a larger hand, then you can afford to just. You'll see one of the worst things you see in octave scales is going in and out of the white. If you can just stay in the blacks, then it's much easier. But you'll have to slow it way down. I'm going to do tenths, and I'm going to melt the middle of my arch in, and then bring this arch up, leaving the wrist low. Let the wrist drop. Let the wrist drop, and then I don't know if you can see it, but I'm doing a little bit of watch. I'm going to do a little bit of pronation rotation. This is the clincher. This is the kicker. Like you draw, and then if you can do a little bit of rotation, so just lay your hand flat, and then roll the middle of your hand, the middle three fingers, while the thumb and the fifth just stay glued where they are. So, I'm going to do it with a larger interval. So that little pronation, supination, that lets the hand go even more. And then again, melt. And then breathe in a little bit, but not stressfully, just like I just want to breathe a little bit. And then I'm going to rotate, pronate, supinate a little bit. A little tiny bit. Next. Oh look, I'm in the black keys, but somehow I'm grazing two white keys that I don't want, but I actually managed to play a clean interval. A little bit of rotation, supination, pronation. Melt down. Let the palm actually press the white keys down. Rest it there. Now this is a wonderful way of using gravity. Let gravity melt the bones into the ivory. And then come out again with a little supination. Watch. Melt the hand into the keys. Supinate. Next. Play. Melt. Don't press muscularly the palm into the keys. Let the palm melt into the keys and then supinate. Boom. Supinate. Yeah, like that. So if you do that for a while and really you have to let go of intention. Oh, I have to play my octaves. You have to let go of that completely. Because there's an image in your head about how you do that, and that image is all wrong. So you create a new image, you stay with the image, let go of all, Moshe used to yell at his students, don't achieve, yeah? So you just do this, and then if you stick with it long enough, the senses get a whole new image of how to do the octaves, and then you'll find your hand can actually extend with none of the efforts to extend that it would normally have, because it's figured out a new way. But you helped it figure out that new way. So this is tricky. It's tricky to do on your own, but I can at least give you a sort of a general indication of a way in which you could work, which would bear fruit.
Thank you very much.
Nice.
Thank you so much, Alan. This has been a wonderful lecture and discussion. I think we are out of time and we'll have other commitments, but
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here with us and for your informative lecture. Thank you.
It was really my pleasure. And if you have any further questions or comments or impressions or anything, like any sort of communication, I'd love to hear from you. And you all have my email address because Christina CC'd me. And I have all yours, so I'll know who you are. And it's been a pleasure for me to open up this conversation with a whole new bunch of people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alan.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.